The heart of the city of London was destroyed, but St. Paul's survived. Manchester, Coventry, Birmingham, Swansea, Liverpool, and many more shared London's ordeal. All were within reach of the German Air Force with bases in France and the Low Countries. It was more difficult for British bombers to reach German cities. The government looked anxiously round for some other way of carrying the war to the enemy.
We decided the only place where we could fight the enemy was the desert, North African desert, at the Middle East Theatre General. There was nowhere else. We couldn't hope to make a landing in France in any foreseeable future, and therefore couldn't injure the Germans that way. So the two alternatives, the two possibles, were bombing. They weren't alternatives. Two possibles were bombing and fighting in the Middle East. And that is why, from those very early days, we began to push, agitate, ask for more armor in the Middle East. And we had to take the armor out of the line here, out of the defense of Britain. There was no other way of doing it.
On December the 10th, 1940, two Commonwealth divisions of General Wavell's command attacked the big Italian army in North Africa. Slightly to their own surprise, they advanced with great speed. Fortress after fortress was taken. 100,000 prisoners were captured. Now there seemed to be a chance to get at the main enemy, Germany, through Yugoslavia and Greece.
We did think that if it were possible to bring certain Balkan countries into conflict with Hitler, that the consequences of that might be really unforeseeable. Couldn't tell what the result could be. The view of the War Cabinet and the Defense Committee at home was that we should, if the Greeks were going to defend themselves against the Germans, we should bring them what help we could. And Dill and I were sent out after Wavell's victories to Cairo to look into this business. Well, when we got there, Wavell said, "Now, I hope you won't mind what I'm going to say. I didn't think I ought to waste time, and I begun the movement of troops and the concentration to enable us to go to Greece."
The Commonwealth landing in Greece was meant to forestall a German attack. To many Greeks, it seemed likely to hasten it. They had held their own against the Italians, but when the Germans attacked on April the 6th, 1941, Greece was overwhelmed in 3 weeks. So was Yugoslavia, which had joined the Allies. 50,000 Commonwealth troops were evacuated.
One has to admit that we didn't obtain the objectives we'd hoped for. We weren't able to conduct, with the help of the Yugoslavs, any effective campaign in the Balkans. Turkey, it is true, remained a defensive pad. But we lost Greece and lost many men, brave men, and more were captured. So in that sense, the balance sheet was much against us. And it was at a pressing time. No question of that.
By May 1941, Germany and her allies controlled most of continental Europe. And in North Africa, a small German force under Rommel had recaptured nearly all the British gains. The British tried to hold Crete as a naval base. With complete command of the air, the Germans attacked Crete with 16,000 parachutists. The first large-scale airborne assault in the history of warfare. In spite of heavy losses, they gained a foothold on a vital airfield, Malimi, which meant that more troops could be flown in. Supported by intensive bombing, the Germans were able to advance against a bigger Commonwealth force. Once again, air power won the battle. Commonwealth losses, 13,000 killed, wounded, or captured, and another evacuation to add to the list of Norway, France, Greece. The British people wondered how much more they would have to take.
Churchill thought it important that Crete should be held at all cost. If we lost Crete, we lost our base in the eastern Mediterranean, our naval base and our air base. And he kept on telegraphing to Wavell, saying, surely you can spare just a dozen tanks for the defense of Melime airfield, which was the chief airfield in Crete, against German paratroops. And Wavell replied that he had no tanks, that they were all having their tracks mended or having their engines greased or something in the delta, and that he couldn't spare even a dozen. Well, Crete was lost, and it was a great disaster, upset everybody in the House of Commons, upset the country. It was a low point for us in the war in the spring of 1941.
I used to be up until 2:30 in the morning, broadcasting to America, the Dominions and so on. And I'd snatch some pretty dicey sort of sleep in a basement in the broadcasting house, and then come out in the morning, and then I'd walk around, and I'd think, I don't think there can be very much more of this, because everything is going. On those mornings, you thought, well, another 2 weeks of this, and there'll be nothing round here but rubble.
On May the 10th, 1941, London suffered its most destructive night raid of the war. Over 3,000 people were killed or injured. Hundreds of fires had to be left to burn themselves out. There seemed no end in sight to the slaughter and destruction. But although Londoners didn't know, it was the turning point.
In April 41, Hitler assembled all the commanders in France, and during 2 hours he talked to us about the part 2 of the Battle of Britain. He told us later, 2 of us, namely Mölders, my friend Mölders, and myself, that it has only been in order to camouflage the offensive against Russia. This has been in April 41. And the raid on the 10th of May can only be considered as a camouflage of the beginning Russian campaign.
Among the casualties of the raid on May the 10th was the House of Commons. For exactly a year of disappointment and defeat, the Commons had sustained Churchill in office. But the important battle had been won. Britain had survived. Now it was Russia's turn.